Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson Real Long podcast. I am your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we're at another Piper chapter, and things start to go from, I don't want to say bad from worse, I just want to say, like...
Bad to also bad.
No, if we were going to go on an escalator, B, this escalates very quickly.
Yeah. Oh, God. Boy, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, that's how you get to the shoe stores up top on the second story.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're really getting punny already with the store puns. I'm interested to know what title you gave these two chapters.
So the one that I thought of that I think I even alluded to last week, because for me, it's very easy. It's going to date me very, very quickly. Is this chapter is called Piper Thinks These Shoes Really Suck.
Yeah. I mean, those shoes aren't necessarily featured. Aren't shoes mentioned in one of the chapters earlier when she's in the Aphrodite cabin?
Yeah.
Shoes are very heavily featured, I guess. She's sort of an Aphrodite child.
I was going for the meme.
Oh, yeah,
like,
no, I know.
These shoes
yes,
suck.
I remember. Oh my God, shoes. I too am a millennial and remember that video, which was like embedded in my brain. I feel like there are a lot of people listening who have no idea what we're talking about. I don't know if it's even worth it or if we should recommend it. It's probably still on YouTube or like some cursed version of it, like a copy of it is somewhere.
I've seen an Azula version of it where someone took Avatar The Last Airbender and put Azula over it, which was really great. Though the other title that I was thinking of was Piper Sees a Really Bad Medea Movie.
Yeah, I mean, there's like that... Medea. I see that. Yeah. I kept like kind of like thinking of like shopping puns, something along the lines of like Piper asks for a refund or something like that.
Piper wants to speak to her manager.
Yeah, like any variation of those work. This is like a pretty I guess obvious series of events after where we left off last time, because we know that she's pretty unswayed by whatever this woman's, well, we know it's Medea, about her like charm speak or whatever she's trying to pull on them, which I think is pretty clear that it's because she's a child of Aphrodite. And then the combination of Leo and Jason not being children of Aphrodite and also being dumb teenage boys being like, oh, she's very persuasive and pretty, and it's like, oh no.
It falls underneath the trope of like the one lady that like has like the seductive power to the one girl's like, I don't understand what's going on kind of mentality, where you have like, because it's a lady against another lady type of trope.
Yeah, I guess. And then, of course, you have to think, like, there's plenty of scenarios wherein, like, a girl would be charmed by another girl, so that doesn't quite make sense in a lot of circumstances if you look beyond a very heteronormative lens. But as in this context, it's really more to do with the fact that she's child of Aphrodite, so, like, that's brought up pretty much immediately, that she's like, oh, normally people are much more swayed by my suggestions.
The way that I was looking at this was kind of like you have Piper on one side who doesn't want to use charm speak for like this bad intent, but then you look at like Medea and she's like the evil version of Piper in that way, of like the dark Aphrodite. Imagining Aphrodite with like an evil mustache and a top hat, being like, ha!
Though Aphrodite has her own issues, to be fair.
Oh, she does. As we see in this chapter, I think we're going to be ending up talking about a lot of things about what is a real narrative compared to like a story, which I feel like is going to be happening a lot in this chapter. But before we get to that...
Well, yeah, you mean the original Medea story that it's based off of? Yeah.
Yes. And before we get to that, why don't you give us a summary of the first chapter, B?
Yeah, so these, like, really notch into each other, both of them. They just sort of, like you said, like an escalation of what happens. So, like, Piper's pretty immediately freaked out and is confused as to why Jason and Leo are, like, so gung-ho with this lady, like, taking them around her spooky store. She does not trust them. They take a look at some potions that can cure all sorts of things, and she's like, oh, maybe one can cure lost memory. There's a lot of, like, sort of really complicated, sad introspection Piper has about how she would rather have Jason remember his old life and then maybe in the process, like, pursue a life that doesn't include her, as opposed to watching him suffer some more, which is, very sweet, very sad. She asks if she can have this potion, asking Medea, who we find out who this is, if it would be able to cure memory. Then she tells this sort of, the saleswoman, Medea, tells this sort of vague story that rings a bell with Piper, of course, because she has read mythology. It's really kind of refreshing to have a protagonist who recognizes when mythology echoes in the future. You know, you'd think more demigods would do that preemptively, but I guess not. She just coincidentally did. This is when the charm speak kind of pops up, with the saleswoman trying to, you know, trick them into, I guess, dedicating all sorts of dedicating their life and making sort of unfair trades in order to get this potion. We also find out that she's a seer, so she knows all sorts of secrets about Piper. So she says that she knows about the secret that Piper is hiding, that she's going to betray them. She hints about going to the Bay Area, which we know is where good old Enceladus is, all of that stuff. And they're so, like, blissed out, Leo and Jason, they don't even realize that they're having this conversation. But Piper's really freaked out because clearly this is, like, weighing heavy on her heart, you know, guilt-wise, and here's this woman who's like, oh yeah, I know all this is gonna happen. I also know exactly how they're gonna die. They should die here. You should just cut to the chase.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's kind of like a really good summary of the chapter, because the way that we look at this, I think it's very clever that it's like in this way of like being in a mall where like everything has a price. I mean, it's weird to say now, but malls are like going the way of the dodo, so sometimes we have to explain what a mall.
Especially now, like so many places just in the past like 5 months have closed because of like COVID. So like malls are like even more on the fast track to extinction.
What I like kind of about this chapter is it's like a lot about the theme of like there's always a price to pay for. There's no easy way to solve a problem. Like there's always going to be a price. Like, oh, what if we gave Jason this memory thing? Well, it's going to cost you like almost like the equivalent of like an arm and a leg. It's like the best way to put it is like Full Metal Alchemist, where you have like equal exchange. Like, what is the price for like getting one's memory back?
Yeah, both of these chapters are like where Piper is trying to sort of negotiate getting something, and you know, immediately Medea is like, "Oh, well, give me your life. If you have this many years of solitude, if you go on this quest, if you do these things for me, then maybe you can earn this." And it's like, I guess it's a very typical mythology thing where you have to like earn something by some sort of sacrifice. It's not just going to be like you could purchase it with monetary means.
Well, here's the problem, though. Piper isn't good at heckling. I'm good at heckling.
Wait, heckling or haggling? Because heckling is very different than heckling.
Heckling. Like when you try to heckle down
That's
a price.
Haggling.
Is that wait?
Right?
What is the difference between heckling?
Okay, heckling is when you go and see a comedian and you're like, "Boo, you suck."
Okay, haggling.
Haggling is when you go to the flea market and you're like, I won't pay more than $1 for this.
No, exactly. That's what I would do. I guess you would heckle her and then haggle her at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. She was kind of doing both. And yeah, in this circumstance, Leo and Jason are very bad at haggling because they're so under her spell that they're immediately willing to do anything for her, even if they weren't going to get anything in return, because they're just like completely under the charm speak, you know, charm, I guess.
And here's the thing, again, when it comes back to is like with great power comes great responsibility, because we see within these chapters that charm speak can be a very dangerous thing, or it can put two best friends against each other to the death. And like there's things that like, I mean, we talk about how Drew's bad, but we see Medea, who is worse. Like, she could, like, we see how, you know, Drew is kind of like this self-centered person, but she doesn't use her charm speak to, like, put people to the death.
Well, yeah, she's like a bratty teenager, but she's not like a, you know, murderous person in the way that Medea is. And this is also a very, like, interesting, like, peer into the psyche of Piper, because then she gets to see what it's like to really be like the victim of charm speak, and she is sort of resistant to it, but she kind of sees the perspective from the outside, like, oh wow, was it like this when I would go to the store and trick the salesman into giving me these things I don't even need, like a lawnmower or whatever. And she starts to get very, very guilty and like full of shame that was the kind of person she was, where she was manipulating these people into getting what she wanted.
Well, here's the thing that's dangerous about charm speak that I've been thinking of. It's like, it's horrifying because it takes one's free will away from them to the point of where they'll just, like, it's like, I guess you could say it's like a silver-tongued devil type of thing, but you're really just taking someone's free will and being like, sure, you can have this.
Yeah, it's like hypnotism, sort of. And yeah, then you get into like all sorts of complicated things of like you're manipulating someone's will, and that's like really creepy, right? Like just the idea of removing any kind of agency that they have. And normally they would snap out of it afterwards in the case of Piper, but like I think when she sees it in action from someone else, especially with someone like Medea, who is much more powerful and able to wield this power for a negative purpose, she gets very creeped out by the whole thing.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the creepy nature of it, is that you have like this power where you can pretty much like enslave anybody, especially with like, oh, if I don't need them anymore, I could just tell them to kill each other, and they'll do that, and that's one of those weird things.
You're already getting into the next chapter where things really escalate. I mean, that's kind of what these two chapters are. They really like sort of notch into each other, at, like you said, where it's just like the escalation of the same circumstance. In the second chapter we read for this week, it really starts to go off the rails, where Piper remembers much more about what she had read about Medea, and it becomes clearer and clearer that she's like very aggressively creepy, like not just, you know, trying to manipulate them for various means, but she's just like basically tricking them into killing each other. I guess we could get into the summary soon.
We can get into it very soon, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we move on is kind of like in my notes I have here, is that like when it comes to Piper, this is like, I consider this one of the definitive Piper chapters, because she's all by herself and she's trying to figure out ways to persuade someone that has the same powers like her, and she has to almost, the training that she has from being with her dad actually saves her, because she doesn't have to deal with this person that has such a huge personality.
Yeah, well, it's kind of not dissimilar from, you know, the chapter wherein Leo has to use his fire powers, where it's sort of like this moment of truth where she realizes both like the negative and the positive of like her abilities, you know, like you said, the great power comes great responsibility thing. In this case, she's definitely like ashamed of the charm speak thing, but also her ability to wield it and to be resistant to it is what allows her to help Jason and Leo when they're under that spell, because she's able to snap out of it and like actually be just persuasive enough to kind of pull them from the thrall of Medea. So it's this complicated thing where she's like ashamed of it, but also it's like a useful tool. In general, any kind of power like this, what it's innate goodness really has to do with the person and how they use it.
Well, yeah, and that's like the thing when it comes to like Piper, is she's always, even though she's conflicted in many ways with obviously her backstory, is that she's still inherently good with her powers because she's using it for good in this way. Plus that because we know who Piper is as a person, like she could easily be manipulated in many ways, but because she's the one dealing with the situation, she's almost, it's weird to say it's like she's perfect for the situation, because she can't be easily manipulated because she comes from like a celebrity background. That's pretty much like, oh, paparazzi, or her dad doesn't have time for her.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like a more like tangible example of the kind of resistance she has to this, but it like Medea even noticed it. She's like, you're clearly a daughter of Aphrodite, because like no one is able to be so, I guess, lucid around her. Like she's able to be like, wait a second, we don't need this, and like kind of keeps trying to like snap the gang out of it.
Especially with like, as like walking around like the mall, she's seeing like clothing racks with more purple shirts and togas and bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah, right. So there's like the hint that all sorts of people have been, I guess, killed or otherwise sort of sold off into bondage and like various deals with the devil that they've made. And that like sort of hints to that, right? We get a few hints of like the existence of like another camp/universe wherein Jason would exist, right? Because then Medea points out that his weapon is not made out of celestial bronze, but instead out of
Imperial gold.
Imperial gold, yeah, that's what so it's like a specific Roman type of metal that also is, I guess, able to fight monsters in a similar capacity.
We've also seen this kind of thing before with Nico's sword, when he has, I think it's like the Stygia ore.
Yeah,
the black ore or whatever.
Something steel. It's made out of some sort of black steel, but...
So I think it's like Stygian iron or something, if I'm remembering it correctly.
It's iron. So there's, I guess, like different magical alloys based on your type of magic, I guess. So that's kind of interesting, though, because, you know, Nico isn't, like, of another mythology than the people at Camp Half-Blood. He just, like, is... so emo. He has like a separate kind of alloy that his weapon is made out of, but yeah.
B, this is how it went down. Rick Riordan's typing. Well, I like Nico being emo, but how can I make him more emo? I got it. We'll give him a black sword.
Yeah, like he couldn't have bronze because it's too preppy looking. Like, I don't really know why that was a choice, but I guess it's not always just a separate mythology thing, but in this case it is, because he has a weapon that isn't just celestial bronze for whatever reason.
But now we have imperial gold, which is for me kind of cool because the Romans love their gold, I can tell you that.
And it has the specific connotation, of course, of being related to Roman heroes and all of that. So, I mean, again, not super surprising. We know that there's something going on with Jason. We don't exactly know to the extent of that or how that works.
Especially with, like, the other thing I thought that was really funny about this chapter is when they're going through the different departments and, like, Medea's like, oh, look at all these potions. This one will cure cancer and this one will give you a horrible death.
Yeah, I remember that. That scene specifically where she's talking about all the potions was very Yzma reminiscent, right? Like, just like, or I could poison him with this. Like, it really had that energy.
Llama?
Turned him into a llama.
Oh man, yeah, exactly. No, I was thinking about there's an episode of Avatar: Last Airbender where Iroh has like this plant and he keeps accidentally poisoning himself because he's making delicious tea. Like, and this one's like, well, this plant either makes a delicious tea or horrible poison.
Or you die a horrible death. Yeah, that's kind of her little creepy tour, I guess she gives them around the store. She has Medea has this weird pride in her creepy store where she's like, and here's this creepy thing I have over here, and it's just like, oh, that's great. I mean, Jason and Leo seem thrilled. They're like, wow, so cool. And Piper's just creeped out the whole time, which is kind of hilarious.
I think that's maybe because of the charm stuff. They almost have like beer goggles on. I'm sorry, nectar goggles on where they can't see like, oh man, this is all horrible and awful.
Well, yeah, they're just, like, completely spitting, so she could be saying anything. I mean, she does straight up say anything. Like, literally, when Medea even says, like, I'm gonna murder you, or you guys should die, they're like, wow, amazing. When can we die?
Yeah, exactly. That's just millennial humor at this point.
It's true, honestly.
Oh, man, I'm waiting. So, B, why don't we move on to the second chapter, because this is the real meat and potatoes. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so things really start to get off the rails in chapter 28 when Jason and Leo, they are like, let's keep on shopping, and Piper's like, and it's sort of like trying to like give them like, you know, speaking with her eyes, you know, when you're in an uncomfortable situation and you try to speak to your friends with your eyes. And Piper starts to remember a little bit more about Medea, what she has read in mythology about her past, and she starts to sort of explain it to Jason and Leo, I guess to snap them out of their spell, and also to let Medea know that she knows who she is. She's like, I got your number. She talks about how Medea helped her brother die because she wanted to forsake her family and go live with this guy. And guess who the guy was? Jason. The original Jason. This has been a theme here where the original Jason echoes through the past, and people are like, wait a second, I know that name. I'm glad they're not like so oblivious to think that it's the same Jason.
Well, to be fair, I'm happy that this Jason isn't the first Jason, because the original Jason's kind of a Richard.
Oh, he's a jerk. Yeah. And that's kind of the uncomfortable thing about Jason having this namesake, right? He's walking through this mythological world, and everyone's like, I remember Jason. He was terrible. So it's kind of doesn't really, his reputation precedes him, even though it's not his own reputation. And of course it was in fact Jason of the Argonauts, and that of course indicates that this is Medea, and she's hecka old and has been around since forever. And Leo gets like really caught up in trying to get various appliances and things, and when asked what they need to give for it, she's like, oh yeah, servitude, you have to do all these horrible things. And he's like, yeah, sure, sounds great. They need to stay focused, of course, because the reason they're there is to get the storm spirits and Coach Hedge, and she's haggling, and Piper's still arguing with Jason and Leo, still explaining the thing about Medea. They're not really getting it. They're still kind of under her spell. But eventually, they kind of get a little bit snapped out of it. They're like, "Wait a second, wait, she killed who?" It sort of like starts to seep through the cracks of this spell that they're under, and they're like, "Wait, this isn't quite right." Finally, it takes them a while, and Piper's like, "Please stop. This is really messed up." And while Piper's trying to do that, of course, Medea's like, "I have leverage over you. I know who you are. I know about your dad." And then it is revealed that Medea, all this time, had been using her charm speak to manipulate Jane, who was the secretary of Piper's dad. So that's how she was able to sort of obfuscate this whole plan and allow this kidnapping of her father and the whole blackmailing of, murdering her friends, all of that stuff was set up kind of by, I guess, who we've been calling the Earth Lady or whatever, and by an extension, Medea has helped this happen. Even so, Piper pushes on and is brave and finally is just able to break through the spell, and Leo and Jason are like, "Oh, wow, we were idiots." And when they do that, she's like, "Okay, dragons, I guess." But not before they break every one of Medea's potions and cause like a horrible nightmare slurry of various potions. So yeah, don't touch whatever that is. Leo nearly gets totally destroyed by one of the dragons, but like Festus does a really cool swooping maneuver. He really saves the day in this circumstance. And not only does he like totally own those dragons, but he uses his talons to grab the cages where the storm spirits and Coach Hedge were. Thank goodness for Festus, because these guys really needed some help. Medea explains that she can restore Jason's memory and also help her save her dad, but she's like, really, I don't need your help, thanks. And they just like yeet out of there because no, don't stay there. There's an evil woman trying to manipulate your friends into killing each other, and also she like definitely helped your dad get kidnapped. So like, not exactly someone you want to make a deal with, and that's kind of where we leave off. We just like, much like the exit of the Cyclopses in Detroit, where they're like, okay, there's really no way to defeat you guys physically because you're probably just gonna respawn anyway. So we just have to like fly away. I'm thinking there's gonna be a lot more escapes like this because there's no real tangible reason why you would keep fighting if they're just gonna come back.
Well, yeah, no, for me, I thought the ending of this was like very cinematic, where I'd imagine like Medea's like shaking up her fist, "Piper," as the whole place explodes. Like, I'm just imagining as the music swells up.
I don't know if it's exactly exploding. Like, it's the
they
store,
say it explodes.
The store does explode, but like, is she actually destroy? Like, you know what I mean?
No,
like,
probably not. Most likely,
you can destroy her store and everything, but it's like a little bit of a different thing because of all of the stirring and everything happening. Where like killing a monster or a being isn't the same as it used to be.
Oh, I thought that afterwards the store would just go online.
Yeah, you could just click through the various potions. It's like, oh, all out of stock. Some girl broke them.
Darn it. Yeah, so like what I like about these chapters is kind of like Medea is such a fascinating character. I guess she's almost like the same way as like Cersei. Actually, she is the cousin of
she is the cousin of Cersei. No, the cousin. Yeah. I was very reminded of Cersei, and then of course they bring up that she's related to Cersei. Did I ever tell you that I had a cat named Medea?
No, I did not know that you had a cat named Medea.
She was fittingly very evil. A very mean cat, and I love cats. I love all sorts of animals, but this was a bad first impression of a cat, because I was like a baby, and my mom had this cat like long before I was born, and she was a mean, cruel, very scary cat who would like fight raccoons outside, and I feel like that's a very fitting name for her, because much like the Medea of this story and of the Jason of the Argonaut story, she just like was a backstabbing, mean little creature.
I mean, isn't that more fitting that we have like Tyler Perry's Medea? I had a friend that maybe once have to watch a bunch of those movies, and it almost felt like torture because he thought they were funny.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Tyler Perry fan, to say the least. Yeah, I feel like that's like the only touchstone in popular culture people have of Medea is like, that's the name of that one really bad movie franchise.
Yeah, the one that makes a movie every week. But it's funny because we look at like the story and how like when it comes to Medea, the way that she perceives herself is much different than how history perceives herself through the narrative. Where like she's the victim, she feels like. Whereas in the narrative, mostly people tell is like that she was the aggressor that kind of like murdered her children and like divided for powers.
Right, yes, that's another interesting thing is as Piper is telling the story of Medea, she keeps sort of claiming that that's like, well, that's how the history books remember it, but it really wasn't like that. I was manipulated in this way. Really, I was betrayed, like kind of trying to paint it as like she didn't do all of the quote unquote horrible things that supposedly history remembers her for. It's hard to say exactly what we should believe from Medea. She doesn't seem like the most reliable narrator of her own story, so who's to say?
Well, here's the thing, and that is like when it comes to history, there is the thing that's written, and then there's the truth. More than likely, a lot of things in history are almost falsified or at least embellished in many ways. Like you can like read a lot of things, and there's like this popular culture belief of like what a historical event might happen, but in reality, it was like way less cool. Though there are plenty of historical events that are super cool, but when you read about them, they're super dull. But, it's like that idea of like what the real narrative is. And for me, I found that to be so fascinating in this chapter, especially if we examine this myth, comparing it to like Circe's myth, comparing it to Medusa's myth, and how, we perceive everything differently.
They're very similar for sure.
It has to do a lot with like how the portrayal of like mythological women in a lot of ways.
And that, yeah, them asserting power, and so much of that has to do with them, like, being duplicitous or cruel or something. And I could see that in another context, you could tell that story. But, like, very obviously, the Medea of this story is also bad, because she's doing some really awful, messed up stuff. So it makes it a lot harder to believe that she's, like, genuinely telling the truth when she says that, like, her history has been twisted. And maybe it's both. Maybe that's part of her evil backstory, right? Is that people have misperceived her, and she's, like, become the evil people claimed she was. And I don't know, maybe if that's the point they're trying to make.
Or possibly she isn't even the real version of Medea. Maybe she's the version of Medea, much like we have the Greek and Roman equivalents. It's like, it's all the personifications of her.
Like a different version of her. Oh, right, like because people believed she was evil, that's what she became kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
kind of like that's kind of like the perception.
If they're not the... What are they if not the cultural recollection of what they represent? I guess maybe. I don't know. I never really thought of that.
It would make sense as well because if you think about it, like a lot of myths were passed down a lot of the ways through like the oral tradition of like father telling it to their kids and so on and so forth, but it becomes a gigantic game of telephone where in different ages you might tell the story a little differently. Sometimes you might embellish it some more, and then that embellishment becomes a different branch of it. Like there's a lot of like interesting things when you look at like oral tradition compared to written tradition.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm sort of persuaded to think that like maybe Medea was like not so favorably remembered, and there was something more complicated going on with her past, with what happened with Jason and her brother and everything. But ultimately, right now, she's doing some messed up stuff, and that's definitely true in the narrative. So not great. Yeah, she tries to get like two teenagers to murder each other just for like funsies, basically.
And yeah, no, totally. That comes back to the idea of like the dark Aphrodite almost, where like she's using her powers of like seduction and charm speak to like put these two people that don't want to murder each other to murder each other.
Yeah, it's like it's totally taken to like the logical extreme of charm speak, where you're like really making people go against their better nature and just full on manipulate them into like doing your bidding for entertainment. It's very gross.
Well, we see that a lot with like how she manipulates Jane in the way of like this is how the plan formed with getting Tristan to like California. Pretty much like even it's like, oh, when we get him back, we'll just say, oh, he goes into a mental asylum or something, like he is broken.
Right, yeah. So much of her ability to manipulate was utilized in that as well. Right. I keep forgetting also that she used that power to help kidnap Piper's dad. So there's a lot of layers here. She's not great. I guess this is like her way of earning her freedom, right? Because she says that her patron gave her this ability to do this, and that's why she agreed to help. So it's like sort of like this like a quid pro quo thing.
I'm more interested now to see who this patron is, because every second they keep getting worse and worse.
Is this not the like Earth woman that we've established
Most likely.
from before. Yeah, and also from the tragedy that happened with Leo. All of that stuff has been the same woman who we don't know the name of yet, right? We haven't established that.
Just Earth Lady. Though, I'm interested to see what...
some sort of mythological patron, powerful god person. We don't know.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of like the fallout of this chapter, because both Jason and Leo heard this whole conversation, so now they kind of know a little more about California and Enceladus and a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much they know, right? Because they are sort of in like a weird daze. I'm trying to remember in these chapters like how much they indicate they're absorbing, because I do know that like when Medea says, "Oh, I'm a seer, I know about all this stuff about you betraying them and about California and everything," for the most part the narrative seems to indicate that they're like not even paying attention or able to like absorb what's happening. So that's kind of a weird, stressful moment where you're like, they're outwardly having this like unspoken conversation about this horrible thing that Piper is ashamed of, and luckily they're like in this weird days where they can't understand it, but it's still like a very uncomfortable moment.
Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable moment, except like when it comes to, if we're going to infer from like previous chapters, like when Piper was like, "Oh, give me this BMW," the person eventually came back to their senses. Like, wait, why did I do that?
Right. So I'm interested to see how much they remember after they are, flying away on Festus. Like, wait a second, was that a dream? Do I remember those things, or is that just sort of like a weird whisper in the back of their mind that they like can't quite recall?
It's gonna be real weird when it's like, man, this was a dream. They look behind them and there's just a giant explosion. They look down, there's Coach Hedge and everybody.
Like, oh, okay, it wasn't a dream. Right, yeah, the explosion was real.
And then Jason's like, "Oh no, it happened again. I can't remember."
Jason's like, Jesus. Or I guess he's like, Zeus.
Oh man, Mother Juno, preserve me.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, Jason already doesn't remember anything, so I guess this is par for the course. He's like, oh yeah. And then he was like friggin' passed out when they were in Detroit too. He's like missing big chunks of this adventure, basically. He doesn't remember who he is. He's like, conked the frick out when they're in Detroit. Then here he's like under a spell. Like most of this has just been him like in various degrees of comatose.
Oh man, by the end of the series, is he just going to be like an old man? I remember I'm 16. Oh, it looks down. I have a beard. No.
Yeah. I don't know. He's not having a great time. For sure.
I don't think anyone's having a great time.
Man, if I were him, I would change his name, though. It's only been trouble that he has the same name as Jason and the Argonauts, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, you see, he adds like a Y to it in Jason, and he's like, "Oh, no, I'm not that Jason. I have mines with a Y instead of..."
Yeah, I'm Jason.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's what... Oh, man, why am I doing like he's like cross-armed and like he like nods his head when he says it? I'm Jason.
It's like in Breaking Bad when Walt Jr. wants to go by Flynn.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
Flynn.
You stop trying to make fetch happen.
Yeah, no, exactly. Though, like, even like within this chapter, I love that, they have like this duel, but then again, we don't see the action on screen. We see it from Piper's perspective, where it isn't a fight scene. Again, going back to the thing that we don't see fight scenes.
Right. It's not like, oh, they parry back and forth. It's more just like her standing on the outside, like, oh, the guys I'm with are murdering each other. There isn't like a lot of detail describing their fight scene. It's just sort of like, this is a spectacle.
I love how enthusiastic you are, almost like that's how Piper's, oh great, they're murdering each other.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when like Leo's like muttering to himself, he's like, so I just killed Jason, and he's just like ready to go, and you're like, wow, you were immediately ready to go hard on that, huh?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the crazy thing about it, because again, look at Charm Speak.
It's like they're friends. It's very sweet, though, that, like, Piper keeps trying to reassure them, like, no, you're friends, you guys, you have no reason to fight. It's, like, kind of really heartbreaking. It's like a worst nightmare scenario if you could, like, imagine yourself in Piper's shoes. Like, if your friends, like, it's not even, like, it's obviously it's an outside villain, but, like, the fact that the villain is, like, in their minds, that they're being sort of forced to go turn against each other, that's the worst part, is she doesn't even have any backup. She's just alone in all this.
I hate to say this, but this reminds me of a movie, B. This reminds me of the first Pokemon movie, Pokemon 2000 with Mewtwo.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what happens in that, but go ahead.
So, Mewtwo has the ability of speaking to people's minds and control people. And the ending of that movie is a fight between all the Pokemon, and Ash gets into the middle and becomes stone, and I cry.
They're like possessed. Okay, yeah, I see. Okay, now I'm getting it. Yeah, Mewtwo always gave me the willies. The idea of like mind control and stuff kind of grosses me out, and I guess that's why these chapters are so creepy. Because it's not, like a monster with big teeth trying to like eat you or whatever. So much of that is like very tangible and doable. Like, yeah, I'll just slash with my sword. Instead, it's like Piper alone trying to use her not very fine-tuned charm speak with like a fancy mirror dagger that doesn't do crap, and like her two best friends who are supposed to be helping her are like tearing each other limb from limb to impress some girl. Like, it's a bad time.
Well, the thing that actually gets him to snap out is that she starts to play against Leo's, like, biggest fear, which is like, oh, this person killed your mom, and that's kind of like what starts to, like, chip away at it.
Right, like, taps into that trauma. Yeah. Also, like, while their defenses are down and they start to question the motivations of Medea, that's, like, when she's able to sort of, like, break in through the, like, the cracks in their, like, I was almost said the mist, which is a different thing, but like in their like stupefaction is like, wait a second, like question what you're listening to. She's a bad person. This is the story of how she acted, and they start to like get really grossed out by like her past.
Well, no, I think Piper's also trying to chip away at like their psyche almost, where it's like the trauma comes out more. Like once you get that trauma out, you'll just be so sad that you won't think about killing each other in this way, which is horrifying to think about, but yet they get through it. Though I really wish it would have been interesting if, like, Jason snapped out of it because he has no memory of everything. That's kind of like they weren't accounting for that. Maybe, like, that's because Juno foresaw a lot of this stuff. Like, oh, he's not as easily manipulated because he doesn't know who he is. Though we kind of see that a little bit here when he sees the Imperial Gold, where, like, he almost snaps out of it for a little bit. Like, he recognizes it.
Right, it's another one of those, like, weird brain blast things that happen to him where he, like, triggers a memory that is, like, long lost in his sort of empty brain.
Well, yeah, you look into his brain, and it's like just a gerbil on a wheel, but the gerbil's falling asleep.
It really is like forget everything except for fine dining and breathing. It's sort of like what happened to him, where he just, like, forgot everything except for, like, wield sword, I guess.
No, for him, it's don't forget fine dining and breathing. It's don't forget Roman warfare and possibly breathing.
And some mythology when it's relevant.
Yeah, exactly. That's when it comes out. It's like, what's his name? Jason?
Oh, apologize in advance if you guys can hear the ice cream man driving by, which is like weirdly chipper given our conversation about children murdering each other.
Wait, ice cream? Can I get some?
If you can run really fast.
I'm coming, Boreas. Oh man, maybe Boreas should be the ice cream man.
Yeah. Our ice cream man is about as creepy as Boreas, so.
Yay! I can't wait to, like, get all that special ice cream. Wait a second, this isn't special ice cream. There's just a lot of plastic on the floor. Oh, Clint Howard, what are you doing as the ice cream man?
I feel like you're referencing something that's just, like, not really registering with me. What are you...
There's a movie with Clint Howard where he plays an ice cream man that kills people.
Okay, I see. Is he an evil ice cream man?
Yes, but the funniest thing about that movie is... B, I want you to picture this. In the movie, Clint Howard has a very hoarse voice. You know how he did that?
I could relate to that.
No, but do you know how he would do this?
Did he scream a lot first?
So what he did was while he was driving to the set on the freeway, he would scream at the top of his lungs on the freeway.
No.
And until he got his voice all good and hoarse.
That's so creepy. I wouldn't do that for any reason.
I'm just imagining, like, the person next to him, like, turns his head to sees this man screaming. Yeah, we're on the 405. I wish I could scream too, bud.
And then you see the movie and you're like, I don't know if that makes it any better that he was doing it for this.
No, but I'm sorry I had to digress. I just thought of Ice Cream Man. And
yeah, that was more of a digression than the actual Ice Cream Man. I think he's gone now. For now. And that's a threat.
He comes bursting through. Well, I got lemon lime and I got the Sonic ice pops that melt real easy.
Yeah, they really melt so fast. What are they made out of? We don't know.
Yeah, we'll never know. We'll never know.
But the gumball eyes, they are never centered. They're always real cockamamie, just kind of looking in all sorts of directions.
Like those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ones or the Spider-Man one.
Yeah. Yeah, all of them. None of them look correct.
They never do, and I'm sad.
Though it's a real mood. Sometimes you really do feel like one of those character ice pops with the misplaced eyeballs. Like, that's sometimes you wake up and that's life, you know?
I've always wondered, like, the person's like, what if we made an ice cream of your favorite character, but when it melts, it becomes horrifying?
A grotesque blob, and the ice and the gumball is so hard and frozen that it breaks your teeth.
Yeah, exactly. It's an oversight. Actually, it's a conspiracy.
It's not a very well-designed treat, really. It just fails on all counts.
Well, no, it's a global conspiracy against the dentist because they wanted a treat that will mess up people's teeth so they come back. That's why I believe Halloween is also a global conspiracy with dentists. It's their Black Fridays.
I'll have to talk to my dental assistant sister about that.
You do that?
Have her weigh in. The grand dentites conspiracy.
She just starts sweating nervously. I gotta go. I gotta bake 3 pies.
No, she doesn't even need to come up with that excuse. This is just a regular Sunday for her.
Yeah, exactly. So back on chapter.
Back on track.
What I like also about the ending of this is that it's almost like this cinematic action scene that I just absolutely love about this, where, you know, Festus comes back and starts like destroying these dragons. And we also get the Venti back. We also get Coach Hedge. Though I like that Piper's solution for destroying Medea is actually advice she took almost from like the presidential pacer test, almost, where like she grabs the shield and she sprints and she throws the shield like a frisbee that knocks Medea into the whole stand of all the potions.
Yeah, this is why it really reminded me of Yzma, the whole like potion stand thing and all of them breaking.
Yeah, I thought she was going to become like a grotesque monster, like almost like body horror from all these potions coming out on her. But we never get that. We never get Kaiju Medea.
No. Yeah, that's the thing, though. She does mention that she's mortal, right? So she's not a monster. She's just magic, I guess.
Yeah, she was been resurrected through magic from her patron, but yet she still has charm speak and stuff. And that's kind of cool, I suppose, when it comes to it, because when you get down to, like, to the nitty-gritty, like, she's still mortal compared to, like, all the other people that we see throughout the story.
Right, yeah, she specifically says she's mortal, so, like, it's the only reason she's back is because of her patron, who is thus unnamed. But other than that, she's not like, say, the Cyclopses, who just sort of naturally reform. I don't really know, actually, what's going to happen to Medea or when she's gone. Like, does she also reform in the same way monsters do, or is that, like, a different process? We haven't really ironed out the kinks of how this works.
Well, B, she does reform. She reforms into a skeleton.
Yeah, I guess we all do in the end.
Oh, I suppose, unless you get cremated. Oh, wait a second. She did get cremated, so maybe she did become dust.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because they set everything on fire. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just like, does the smoke just, like, billow up and then she be, like, just forms back together again? Like, I don't really know.
Exactly. She's gonna become a Power Rangers villain where she becomes 50 feet tall, and all of Chicago looks like Japan for like 5 minutes. Oh no. And then Festus has to become Megazord. Actually, you know what? I think this is kind of cool, actually. Let's get that crossover event. He's legitimately a Deus Ex Machina, isn't he? He's literally a god of the machine.
I know, there's so many literal Deus Ex Machinas in these stories because there truly are gods and machines and gods within machines who swoop down and help people. But that definitely is how he functioned in this moment, where there kind of was no way that Piper was going to be able to handle this on her own. Not to diminish her abilities or anything like that, but, you know, she's on her own. And her 2 backup friends are under a spell that they're unable to break out of, and she just needed a little bit of help, so I'm really glad that Festus shows up. They also really needed a getaway, because there was just, like, kind of, like, no way they were going to be able to handle all of this with the dragons and with Medea. Like, they wouldn't have been able to fight their way out of it. They just kind of had to hightail it.
Yep, and oh no, she's gonna use her charm speak on a dragon. Too bad for the dragon that it doesn't like people.
It's kind of hilarious, though, that so much of this chapter is them, like, negotiating and trying to get out of there and, like, get Coach Hedge and get the the venti, and then like Festus shows up. It's like, all right, you losers, hop on, and like swoops them up, grabs both of the cages, and then yeets out of there in like 5 seconds. And you're like, okay, so all of this was kind of for nothing, because really we just needed the dragon to show up at the end. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, B, it wasn't for nothing. We got a cool action sequence, and then we
did. I mean, we did. It's just like very funny when that kind of thing happens, because you see Piper just trying to like very delicately navigate all of this, and then we just need a robot to show up like and help everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he causes maximum damage, though. I have a feeling they're going to do something like they do in a lot like Star Trek, where like what they're going to do with Festus is the one big bad is going to like just swat Festus like right out of the sky or something to prove that they're a lot stronger and more powerful. I have that feeling like in Star Trek where if they want to show a character's like powerful, they throw Worf to the ground to like beat up like the really burly person.
There's definitely no longevity to Festus as like a sidekick if they don't fix him, right? Like he's gonna break down again. There's like he has a part that is irreplaceable and that is already damaged. It's been multiply cleaned up and tried to be fixed up by Leo a few times. So, I mean, the chances of him going haywire and being, like, evil and exploding everything with fire is very high. The chances of him plumbing out of the sky again are very high. Like, I don't think he's very dependable still, until they're able to, I guess, find a replacement part somehow, or who knows what they're gonna do.
My theory about this B is that he's gonna sacrifice himself, and then that's going to be the major thing.
Like a big Hero 6 kind of thing?
Yes, Tadashi is here.
Spoiler alert for that movie, I guess. Or, I guess it would also be an Iron Giant thing. Wow, they really like to sacrifice, like, beloved robots in children's stories.
Or like Data from Star Trek Nemesis. Well, I think the reason why they kill off the robots is because you, in by sacrificing themselves, you at that moment bestow them humanity.
They become human.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. It's just very sad. I hope that he doesn't do that, because like he's sort of has that real like noble steed, loyal dog energy that a character like Mrs. O'Leary and like other characters we had in the past, or even Blackjack or whatever. So if he were to die, it would be really very sad. But Rick would do that, huh? Wouldn't he? Just to twist the knife in my heart.
B, are you satisfied with your care?
And his name is Festus, which means happy. I mean, you're gonna kill a dragon named Happy? That's just, I don't know. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We don't even know if that's gonna happen, but it feels like it's gonna happen now that you've presented the idea to me.
Why would I'm not, don't put this evil on me, Bryce. Don't you dare put this evil on me.
Yeah, it would be, Rick Riordan putting that evil on me. He wrote it the way he wrote it. Who knows what happens? But certainly something else that is bad is going to happen regarding Festus. There's not, gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be a red herring where like for the rest of the book he's like totally chill and doesn't fall apart. Like there's been way too many mentions of how much he's falling apart on the inside, which I mean, same.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like most people now. You just look fine on the outside, but inside you're just internally breaking down.
Yeah, all of us have a chip in our brain that's completely fried and irreplaceable.
Yeah, exactly. I think I take medicine for that currently. So B, what do you think is going to be happening in the next chapter? Because they got Coach Hedge and they got the Venti.
Next chapter. They did. In the very last moment they do. So this was a Piper chapter. The next one is a Leo chapter, I believe, right? Yeah, so Leo, maybe they will talk a little bit more about Festus and everything. They're leaving Chicago. I guess they're headed towards California, right? Because they knew that they had to go to... because they need to return the storm spirits to what's-his-name, the other wind guy.
Boreas?
Where is he? I don't remember now. No, not Boreas, but like the other... The one that like goes searching for all of the various winds and is like angry when the Venti gets scattered. Yeah, whatever his name is, they have to return that. So I guess they're looking for him to make a deal. I don't know.
Well, I guess they're leaving on a dragon.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we don't have, like, the chapter titles to even really give me a hint, so I have no idea.
But we'll see what's happening. All we know is that they're probably going to wake up maybe, like, did I do that? Did you do that? Oh, man.
Yeah, there might be a bit of a filler chapter, too, of them just, like, hanging out on the dragon for a little bit, being like, guess that happened.
Oh, I can't wait to see when they, like, unfreeze Coach Hedge, and he's going to be like, oh, I hate you guys. Oh, it's the worst dream I've ever had.
Yeah. Aeolus is the name of the guy.
Aeolus.
Who, he gets real annoyed whenever a Titan War happens because he has to go find all the wind spirits. So in this case, they're returning that first before they make their way to the Bay Area.
He was a Pokemon master before Pokemon. He had to catch them all. Man. Well, I think on that note, think that's pretty much all we need to talk about this week. B, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com. I was also recently interviewed for an article that's going to be on Lifehacker. So we'll see what that's about. I think it should be out soon. I don't know when it's going to be out, but I will have a link soon, and I'll probably like retweet it and post it on my Twitter and various social media. So.
See, that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be some really cool articles.
Yeah, it's not the most fun subject. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about what it's about just yet, but, keep your eye out for that.
Well, if you want to find me on social media, you can find me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. You can follow our show at halfblood_radio. We also have a Patreon/Radio Camp Halfblood. We also have a new voicemail, so if you want to call into the show, we're actually going to be doing our mailbag episode very, very soon. It's actually, we've recorded it. It's going to be released probably in the next couple days or couple weeks, or one of those days when I have time to finish editing it. So that number is 714-468-5412. Again, that number is 714-468-5412. 5412. So check that out. Leave a voicemail. We'll play it on air, and we'll respond to it like everything we do. So thank you guys so much for coming to another wonderful episode of Radio Camp Half-Blood. I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal, everybody. See ya.
Bye, guys.